Welcome, everybody, to another episode of this Sacred Journey podcast. I am your host, Jackie Zabalza, and today I'm really excited to introduce Ariel Maguire. I recently came across her, and she's kind of being a little like heaven sent, like an angel that's been 100% supportive me in my financial journey and in the whole setting up my business. So I'm going to allow Ariel to speak more about her wisdom around finances and how specifically for spiritual entrepreneurs, like there's a lot of wisdom that she has to share with us. And one of the things that why I call you like spirit sent you to me, and it's more like I feel like you're an angel embodied. I was calling in for an accountant or someone that could support me in my journey and that actually I could understand them. And then you're like a spiritual accountant. And I'm just like, what? I never thought those two things could be together. And a little background of what I know about you is that you worked as an accountant, had your own firm for many, many years, and now you are supporting people, continuing to support them with their finances, but also you're Akashic record reader. You do gene keys and human design readings and support people into how to hold their business with these designs based on what's best for their individual way and how their signature works. And you also live in a cacao farm in Hawaii. So it's amazing. And without further ado, I just want to pass back the microphone to you. And how are you doing? Thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I have a very interesting story because I opened an accounting firm when I was 23 years old, and it just sort of fell in my lap and evolved very organically. And I had the opportunity to work with hundreds of business owners when I was very young. And so I learned a lot in my 20s about accounting, taxes, business ownership, managing employees, just like the whole thing. And of course, like many of our stories, my life fell apart and that piece dissolved, but it was all in purpose. It was all a part of where I'm still moving to. And in that breakdown, I had a extremely transformative spiritual awakening. And now I sort of bridge both worlds where I've gotten very into astrology, human design, gene keys, numerology, how we can use these systems to understand ourselves, our energetic blueprint, what we're here to bring to humanity, and how to fulfill and live out that purpose. And then also while existing in the times that we live in now in the country that where we're stationed, with all the restrictions and rules and laws that we have in place to participate here in the economy. And so it's really funny kind of holding these extremes of like, I can go way up into the Akashic records and like pull all this information down, and then I can also like sit down and do someone's taxes. So I hold this extreme, like polarized, I'm a bridge between those two worlds. And now what brings me a lot of fulfillment and part of my purpose in this moment is helping all of these extremely gifted spiritual entrepreneurs really step up into the next level of business ownership, how to serve humanity, but also serve themselves and bring themselves the abundance and prosperity that we all deserve to have while navigating all these laws and things that we have to participate in order to maintain an energetic alignment and keep our channels open so that we're not blocking ourselves and we're able to serve all of the people that can use our gifts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, amazingly said. As a spiritual entrepreneur healer, I can speak from experience of how what you just said that you hold both polarities so well. It's so needed, and especially in every single area of life. Like we need doctors that can do that can be spiritual and that, and scientists and accountants and lawyers, not just one or the other, and simultaneously for people like me that I thrive in the spirit world. Like this 3D reality is very challenging. And I'm learning, I'm having the initiations, like having the support and the guidance of someone like you that has like a feet in both realms and can understand me. I had an accountant before you, and it was like we were speaking different languages. They would just not understand my business. I couldn't understand the way they communicated, and you've made it so easy for me that I'm just so grateful, and I wish for the world to have more people like you. And okay, I have a few questions for you, but I'm going to begin with the first one, which is, um, yeah, many spiritual entrepreneurs like me, we really struggle with finances, with money. And we have this resistance towards money. It's almost like ingrained in our mind, in our system, that is almost like spirituality and money don't go together, right? It's like this disconnection. And with that, like we live in a world where we need money in order to survive, in order to pay for things. We no longer live in a reality where, the shamans were completely taken care by the tribe. That still happens in certain tribes, but in the Western world, that is not happening. You're not like living in a monastery. If you want to live within this world and be of service in this different ways that are being asked for humanity right now in the cities in the Western world, we need to have our finances in check as well. And I'm curious to hear like from your experience, a phone call came in, working with spiritual entrepreneurs. What is the main blockage that you can pinpoint, that you can see happening, and how their beliefs around money are holding them back?
Yeah, this is a great question. So, um, the main, what's happening for all of us is we have arrived in these human bodies with a lot of ancestral unresolved trauma. So a lot of this is unconscious, and and then we're born and we're little children, and we are programmed in those, especially in those first 7 years of life, by our parents and a society that is living mostly in scarcity and poverty mindset. So the primary blocks are around scarcity and poverty. And these are frequencies, background frequencies that we are individually and collectively running. And it is part of our purpose in this lifetime to alchemize those. And so a lot of us actually jump into families that have this because part of our intention is to clear this for our soul, for our energetic frequency. And so what happens is we grow up in this world where we are taught by everyone and by the media and how, watching our economy in every way all around us. We are taught that we have to work hard for money, that money is bad, having money is evil. I mean, there's all of these like big fears and programs around what money is, who has it and who doesn't, and what you have to do in order to acquire that money. And so what ends up happening for us on an energetic level is we become really constricted and restricted. It's like when I see people's energetic frequency around money, it's like small, it's not expanding out of their body. And you probably can experience this. I mean, basically what I hear on repeat from every single entrepreneur that I work with is like, I don't want to deal with my taxes. I don't like what's happening with my tax money. Why do I even have to pay taxes? I don't want to look at my bank account.
Yeah.
And if you have that feeling in your body when you think about, oh, I have to look at my bank account, and there's fear, there's a feeling, in the center of our body. This is all mostly coming from past lifetimes and programming from when we were children. And so money is bad, money is evil. All of these beliefs that we have cause our energetic frequency to be restricted. And from that place, we are blocked. Like if the frequency is not flowing, we are blocked. And money itself is like a neutral energy point. Like money by itself, without all of these attachments or beliefs around it, doesn't carry its own frequency. It's amplifying our frequency, right? And it really is a method of energetic flow. And so if we're restricted around it, or contracted is the word I'm looking for. It is not flowing and it's going to continuously get blocked. We're going to try to push out and then it gets blocked coming in. And so, like, unfortunately, we have to heal that part of us that is resisting, the part of us that is resisting to paying the taxes in the first place, the part of us that looks at all of that as bad and evil. The reality is that we've incarnated and we've chosen to live in this country where we have this taxation system. And this is where we are intending to do our purpose work. And because we are here, we are engaged in that system and we need to participate in it in order to stand in our full integrity. And so it's sort of like we can't actually stand in that integrity if we're ignoring it or if we're pushing it off, right? The frequency is not in flow. There is no current because we're closed off to it. And so I get all of these entrepreneurs who are like, I don't want to deal with my taxes. And then the next thing is I'm not making any money. And it's like, well, let's get comfortable dealing with the taxes and clearing these blocks. And it really just takes looking at it and finding our power, standing on our integrity, right? And then the money's going to start flowing.
Mm. Ooh, I love that. And I mean, I am one of those people that you describe. It's exactly to the T, where every time I thought about money, it like the energy of overwhelm came through that is so overpowering and so overwhelming that it's almost paralyzing. So the idea of even having to deal with taxes, looking at my bank account, like looking at my numbers, it took me months to even get my nervous system ready to do that. Because I used to not have to worry about this. I used to travel and live in different places where it was mainly like exchange. It was a different kind of living. I didn't have to live within the matrix until very recently when I decided to move back to the States. So confronting myself with the system has been a shock to my system. And I feel even anger, like you said, like about having to pay taxes, like why do I have to do this? All of these things. But one thing that I've been having to surrender to is the fact, exactly what you said, this is a reality. This is where I'm choosing to live. And there's a game that needs to be learned how to play. And if I don't confront it, it's like almost like what I'm realizing now, after having my meetings with you, is that it's actually not that scary. And it's better to have a very real, grounded look at your finances and where they're at so you can start making changes towards your actual goals versus just being blindfolded and just not knowing even what's happening, which was kind of my reality. And I find I have a lot of friends in the spiritual communities all over the world. And sadly, I feel like this is the reality of so many of us. So I feel like I'm not speaking just for myself, I'm speaking for a community, like a group of people. And one of the things I mentioned of like I want to start with taxes thing because this is what's happening right now. Everyone's having to pay taxes. You said that resistance to taxes and like in a previous conversation, you mentioned something like even that can be spiritual. Like, and I'm curious, like, what is your opinion? How can we like see our paying taxes in a spiritual way? Like, I'm really curious about that. I really want to hear that.
Yeah. So there's two ways. The first thing is that paying taxes means that you are successful and that you have made money. And so owing taxes is a reflection that you're fulfilling your purpose work and that you are successful at it and that you are abundant and sitting in prosperity. I think that we have a tendency to look at taxes as bad because we're judging what our government is doing with that funding. And we often look at the bad things, which there are plenty of. Like we are validated in having that observation of how our government functions. But there are simultaneously so many good things that that money does. Taxes are a way of collectively circulating wealth. So if your mission is to help humanity improve in any way, paying taxes is towards that mission because it reaches people who are in need. It reaches people who don't have the money to buy food. It reaches people who want to visit national parks. I mean, it allows transportation. Like there's so many ways that tax money is actually used to benefit the collective. We just tend to focus on the bad things like war. Of course, we don't want our money going towards that, right?
Yeah.
But when we spend all of our time thinking about the negative, our unconscious starts running that story, and that there is then dictating our frequency. And so I think it's really more about getting into the seat of gratitude and thinking like, what are the positive things? Maybe even making a list if this is something that you're actively dealing with, the positive things that my taxes go towards in my community. Schools, I mean, we might disagree with how the school system is run, but again, it's creating an environment for children to go to who might not otherwise have access towards nurturing teachers or education, right? So there's all these positives. It's just that we're telling ourselves the negative stories, right? And truly, when we are making a lot of money and we're paying a lot of taxes, we suddenly have the ability to impact so much more change. We're able to impact that change with our tax dollars, with money we're donating to different charities. I mean, having money and having this system, this could be a positive system, is sort of my point. It's just that it's been turned negative in the current energetics we're running with. But in a world where everything is perfect, there's still going to be people who need help. There's still going to be community things that need to be funded. And so the taxation system in itself, I think, could be good or is partially good. It's just really our perception. And like again, the media spend so much money telling us stories that dictate our frequency, and then we're creating this reality, we're creating this experience. And so kind of taking a step back and thinking about like what is the taxation system really, what is it meant to do, and how can I, when I'm sending my tax payments in, how can I affect change? And that is with our intention. So whenever I submit a tax return or send money on behalf of myself or a client, I send prayers with that. I don't just send it off to be used for war. That's not what my dollars are being used for. And so being really intentional about the stories we're telling ourselves about the taxation system and how we power our money when we send that money towards them, I think is really the key to start transforming the experience we're having with this system.
Wow. I love it. I had never like fully seen it like that, because I only see the negative and I only feel the negative of government, but you're right. There's also good within that. It's a mix. It's not just black and white. It's like in everything, right? So yeah, thank you for that shift in perspective. Um, so much was coming to me, like as you were speaking. And one of the things that I want to share since um the first topic that we started speaking, to me is mind blowing how we are not taught how to take care of our finances in school since we're little. Like how that is not even part of like the educational program, and how we're just thrown out of like the school system and even college and without any clue of how to deal with money and how to deal with our finances or how to do our taxes. We kind of have to figure it out on our own. And then there's shame around it because we don't know, but no one taught us. It's like something that you have to be self-taught. And some people are great at it. Some people it's like easy for them, but for a lot of us, it's not, especially intuitive people. People are more creative. My brain doesn't work in numbers. So for me, this is like so challenging. And I like for me, I mean, I'm an adult now. I assumed people assume that I should know everything about this. And I dare to say sometimes there's shame around it because I don't know anything. I'm barely learning because I'm barely having to learn, right? I'm barely forced. I purposely took myself out of the matrix and out of the system for like the last, for a big chunk, like since I was 21 until like I was 32. I was gone. I was not here. I was not having to deal with any of these things. So now coming back and having to re-educate myself, and even some people who are already, living the job, like having to deal with all of these things, but they still don't have like an overall well-rounded idea of how to really manage their finances. My question would be like, what would be your like tips, your suggestions of like where to start when you're like in zeros, in blanks, and what would be like the main few things that will go into how to organize their finances and manage them in a way that is um, intelligent and sustainable.
Yeah, great question. And this actually speaks to how I landed into doing accounting because I came out of it was sort of like in the middle of college and I was like working for different little companies and it was clear that they needed help with this and I recognize patterns. I'm not even necessarily good at like math. I mean, I sort of am now by default of doing this work for a while, but like it's more that I'm good at patterns and understanding like rules and how to follow them. But I also break a lot of rules, so it's like funny that this happened. But it when I was in my early 20s, I saw how many people needed help with this, and I am a life path 9. I am here to help humanity, and so I was like in my early 20s with all this energy, and I was like, I can help people with their bookkeeping. And I opened up a bookkeeping firm when I was like 23. And I'm self-taught. I did eventually go back to school and got a certificate in accounting, but I'm self-taught. This was not something that was taught to me, and I didn't learn it in school until later. But basically, what I would recommend for getting started is to first start with just tracking your income. And you can do this in a simple Excel spreadsheet. Of course, you can get fancy and get like an app on your phone and your computer that's like tracking more things for you. But to just start with tracking your income first. And what that means is when you receive income, write down the date, where it came from, and the amount. And this information, while you're doing this, you can also get grateful, right? For every money that comes in. Yes, please, thank you. More of this is great, that energy. And kind of separating that from looking at your expenses, because when we're looking at everything together, I think we're less in gratitude because we're looking at how much stuff costs us, and we're definitely looking at that through our wounds, right? So
Mhm.
first, just starting with tracking your income, and then move over to also adding your expenses. And I like to cycle sync with my menstrual cycle. And if you don't have a menstrual cycle, you can sync with the moon. I've personally found that the best time of the month to do this is during the follicular phase, which would also be the waxing moon. And during this time, and maybe, track your month and see when you have the energy and the focus to do this. But there's always like a 2 to 3 day window where my body is like ready to do some bookkeeping work or some legal work or sort out my business stuff. I have the energy and the attention to do it. And I don't have it all month. And there are certain times of the month where looking at this is not a good time for those of us who exist more in a state of flow. And also like if, we're in a big energy spike, like that's not a good time, right? So timing is everything. And creating sort of a ritual experience around it. So light a candle, turn on some nice music, like set your space so that you feel nice and comfortable, get a nice warm drink while you're doing this. And so once you start spending that more kind of sacred time looking at your income, you can then start also looking at your expenses. And you might even start calling them something different if the word expense or the word bill kind of triggers you. You can call them like gratitude payments,
Oh.
money that's going to others for them to have abundance and prosperity, right? Even if that's a utility company, like we can always find a way if we're conscious and we're paying attention to how we're thinking about it and the story we're telling ourselves. There is always a positive light. The shadows of things are really blaring sometimes, but it's mostly coming from an unconscious part of our thinking. So just getting conscious with it and mindful with the story you're telling yourself, the space you're setting, right? And then after you start looking at your income, the next thing with your gratitude payments is to do the same, just in a simple Excel spreadsheet, or, I mean, you can handwrite it, would be kind of the older version of doing it, but having it in the computer is helpful for down the road. Just write down the date, who it was paid to, like what it was for, and the amount. And if we're talking about business, so the way that you know what business expenses to keep track of, the general rule is if that money that went out with the intention or with the knowing that it was going to be attached to money coming in some way. That money going out is connected to money coming in. The IRS has like a more defined version of this, and they really want your expense to be tied to your income. It's like, would you have to spend this money if you weren't running your business? Would you be spending this if you weren't trying to generate money coming back to you? So those are the things you should keep track of and create a practice around it and visit it often. This should not be something you sit down and do once a year. It's going to be so overwhelming to look at all of that information at once. And then there's a shame cycle that will be triggered around, why didn't I do this sooner? Why am I not looking at this? Why are these subscriptions coming out of my account that I didn't know about? It triggers all these shame cycles. And so instead, get ahead of it, be conscious and mindful. And like for me personally, I do this and I only do it once a month. I'm an accountant, but I don't like to look at my stuff all the time. I sit down once a month and I look at the prior month. So like it's February, I would sit down at my cycle time and I would be looking at January, writing down all my income, looking at where it went through, what came through, what person it came through, feeling grateful for that. Looking at my expenses, what were these for? Were they necessary? Is there anything I need to do with this information? And being grateful that that money is going out, because my ability to pay others, no matter what it is me circulating wealth out. And what a gift that is. Like money truly has a power when you're putting that level of intention around that it is an energetic flow. I mean, it's called currency. It is a current. It
Mhm.
is like all the other currents of energy that are moving in our environment. So I could give so many more practical tips, but I'd say that's where you start. Creating more of a ritual experience, but also in a grounded way where we're intentionally and mindfully looking at everything and paying attention to the stories that are coming up while we're doing that, and starting to change those stories. And the way that you change a story around money, taxes, all of this stuff is by just saying the truth out loud. Is it really bad or is it both good and bad? You can start there.
Wow. Ooh, this is so amazing. At the beginning of the year, I set up an intention to the universe, and I like doing this every year. Like the things that I want to manifest, and one of it was on the top of my list, and I never ever manifest anything around money. It's the first time in my life. And what I said is like I want to be able to make finances fun, enjoyable, and like I really like my approach to them, my relationship to money is like exciting. And you just described like the way to make that happen, because for me it's like so life is a ceremony. Like everything I do is intentional. When I'm cooking, when I'm showering, when I'm driving, like everything is like constantly for me like a communion with divine. And somehow in my head I had thought that things like this, like paying taxes and everything, was not that, and I couldn't marry it, that it was like taking me away from the holiness of life. And I love your perspective of actually including that in the sacredness of an everyday life. Like we have to do with this. So how can we make it holy? How can we make it a ritual? How can we make it ceremonial and enjoyable? So maybe if you're not so into ceremonies, like I don't know, like I'm thinking like put exciting music and dance while you do your taxes, like just to change the
Yeah.
frequency. Is that it? Like changing the frequency of this, it's already sending a ripple effect. Like everything is energy. So the energy we're putting into money or into all of these things is going to reflect back at us. So everything you're saying is like, yeah, if you come in with your money, with your taxes, like, oh fuck, I don't want to deal with this. I hate this, which has been my story, and I'm reframing it right now. Obviously, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get like lack and more overwhelm and more everything. But if you're coming in with like, yes, I'm excited, I'm grateful for for everything I receive, but also what I get to pay. Like I get to pay my water bill. So I have water. I get to pay my rent. So I have a beautiful place to live. Like all of these things, instead of I have to, I get to do these things. It's such a already like a refreshing, like it feels so different. It feels like, oh, like my body can exhale and like breathe. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. with all of these, another question that was coming to me is, again, as a spiritual entrepreneur, sometimes I I have felt historically, and I'm changing that right now. I'm like in the process of upgrading my prices, and you've been like really supportive of that as well. And it's like almost like this guilt and this shame to charge like high prices for your service. And again, I'm going to speak from my experience, right? Like there's this belief when I really sit with it, there's this belief that these things should be free. And I think it's a belief that many people have, very subconscious, because historically, spirituality, spiritual support was free. But again, because the people who were the monks or the shamans or the spiritual leaders of the community were completely supported by their community, by their tribe, they did not have to worry about paying bills. They did not have to worry about figuring out about their physical reality. Everything was taken care of. Everything was provided, and they had that ability to be like just the bridge to only focus on their spiritual connection, so they could like be the ones taking care spiritually of the community. And now that things have changed, and even though we know this in the mental way, like I know this, like, oh, I have to pay this, so I have to charge, there's still this ingrained like guilt that keeps coming up every time that I have to, like, when people ask me how much is your session, and I'm like, I cringe a little, like I struggle sometimes saying how much, and like now that I'm in the place where I'm about to raise my prices, that it comes up a lot. So I see this again with so many incredible healers out there that are just like providing a beautiful service, and they're super undercharging, like to the point that they're barely able to support themselves financially. Most of them are in debt. And how can we reframe them? How can we change that belief system? Like, how can we even begin to approach into healing that and shift it?
Yeah, this is a great one. And I also am going through this lesson in my life. Um, and I would say like this is all a scarcity wound. And it really comes down to there's a lot of things, there's a lot of components. So yes, we're in a time where currency is what we've all collectively agreed on. Currency is the thing we've collectively agreed it is what we're going to exchange for our energy. And um, with that, inflation and the cost of living has gone up insanely just in our lifetimes. And so the amount of money, like paying somebody $20 an hour, is not what it was 20 years ago. It just that money doesn't go as far to getting them food or whatever things they need in their life, right? And so there's a couple dynamics going on. One is within our own frequency that we do not feel that we are worth more money. And we just have to start telling ourselves the truth. The truth is that I need $5,000 a month to pay my bills. And that is my basic necessities. That is not me feeling abundant and prosperous. That is not me being able to go and get the treatments, the healing treatments that I need for my body. And so I end up in a restricted, I keep using that word, but I mean constricted state of frequency. And similarly, we are putting that on our clients. We're saying they can't afford it before we even ask to see if they can. And so really what we need to start doing is telling ourselves the truth and changing the story that's running in our minds, and trusting that whatever our price is, that it is, we determine with a lot of mindful like thought of where we put that price, that is the energetic exchange that we need to fulfill ourself and to provide our gifts for this person. And so changing the story around like what we're telling ourselves around that pricing. I am worth, $200 an hour, because the amount of energy that it takes me to prepare to meet with this person, and the time it takes out of my day, and the amount of money that I need to survive, like all of these things kind of come in together, and that is a just and equal request. And we have to trust that the universe is going to provide our clients with that money to funnel to us, and that we are then going to funnel that money out back into the collective. The money is moving around in a cycle or in a current, right? And so it's flowing into them, it's flowing to us, and we're flowing it back out. And if any point during that process we are holding because we are afraid that we won't have enough, or we are stopping the universe from giving to us because we're saying, "Oh, I'm not worth that." We've stopped the flow of the energy. And really what we're here to do is hold space, hold energetic space while others are healing. And what could be more valuable? Why would somebody be paying more money for their food than for the energetic healing that they're receiving from the space we're providing, right? Like, why are we less important?
Mhm.
And it does come down to past life, like ancestral stuff that we've pulled through into this lifetime. And we have a lot of belief systems that don't apply in our current situation. We've also been programmed so heavily by like the evil forces of the world, to not collect and hold money. It's like we're looking at them saying, "You're doing this wrong. Like, that's bad what you're doing," and then we're constricting ourselves from doing that. But then they end up with all the power, and power being the money to circulate to help people. And so, like, if our purpose really is to heal humanity, and we require a energetic compensation to do that so that we can live and survive, what would be more important than pricing ourselves appropriately? Like, what could be more important than that? This is really coming down to like a self-worth, thinking that we're not worthy, thinking that our gifts are not impacting, or whatever stories we're telling ourselves that we also know are not true, right? Like, we tend to focus on the more negative stuff, but there's another side of that that has a lot of truth and a lot of light and a lot of goodness. Like, we couldn't be doing anything more important than charging for our time appropriately and holding space for others and providing them with the opportunity to experience our gifts and heal. And then those clients that we work with are able to turn around and do the same for others, and it becomes a domino effect. So, you know, I think there is nothing more important than adjusting our frequency. It all comes down to a frequency issue around, we have all these beliefs and fears and programs that keep our energy really contracted. But when you start telling yourself a new story and you experience that expansion, you will no doubt experience people. There's so much money out there. There's so many people who are willing to pay you. And we can always hold space for the people who don't have money. And all of us feel that very intensely because we've all been in a space where we don't have money, or most of us have. And so when those people come to me, I trade with them. I find some other way to energetically compensate myself. I also just hold space in my life that there's always going to be people that I'm helping for free, and that sort of counterbalances the people who pay me very well to help them with their stuff. And so I don't look at every client exactly the same. I sort of evaluate them as they come to me. I use my channeling abilities to know this person needs help. They can't afford to pay me right now because they're in that contracted state. I'm going to help them anyways. And that sort of fulfills my need to like provide this work for free. Spiritual knowledge should be free. We all have access to it. Some of us are more healed and are able to channel that through more than others right now. But ultimately, everybody should have access to it. We shouldn't be holding things behind a closed, payment door. And so, it's not one or the other. It's not like you only pay me $1,000 or I'm not working with you. Um, Energetically feel into it and find those people who you can help. Find ways in your community that you can volunteer and give your time. And know that that is also always repaid to you. And so when you give your energy freely and abundantly without that contracted feeling, that's going to come back to you in the payment clients, right? And so you give to the ones who can't afford, and the universe will bring you the opportunities to get to work with the ones who can give very abundantly.
Mm. Yes, I feel that everything you said just really resonates with me. And one of the main things that you mentioned that I had heard a similar thing somewhere else that really helped me shift my perspective around money in the spiritual communities was that is like most of the power right now is like on those 1% of billionaires that are just doing things to destroy the planet. They're doing things to like creating wars, like destroying humanity. And they get the power because there's a bunch of us that maybe have the intention to help heal the planet and poverty and everything, but we're so blocked in our abundance and in our worth, in all of that, that we are not allowing ourselves to receive the financial prosperity and wealth that will allow us to be even in greater purpose and to actually make like the bigger impacts, not just like energetic but physical impacts. So that really has been helping me shift my perspective around money and the everything you said, like not feeling worthy of receiving this. It's like actually imagine if the world was ruled by spiritual conscious people, like financially.
Exactly.
If like all the billionaires were those, like if the Trumps and the Elon Musk, like all of those people were actually spiritually conscious and actually wanted the best for the planet instead of themselves. We will live in a completely different world. And I think right now we're living in an inverted reality where what should be the best for all is not happening. And it is our responsibility to change that in all levels, right? But financially is one of them. So
Mhm.
all of that perspective, it really helps. And one more thing I want to add, like what's helping me feel finally ready to raise my prices is like, yes, realizing the reality of like financially everything I need to just pay my bills to exist. And secondly, realizing like, because you can say like, okay, you pay your bills, but then you don't need much to live. This is another mindset that we have a lot in the spiritual community of like humbleness and like we don't like live with the bare minimum. And I actually, no, it takes so much energy, like especially specifically people like healers and everything. Like, we are so energetically sensitive. Our bodies are so sensitive that we require even more like care and like the best foods. Like I have so many food allergies and sensitivities. I need all of these like super expensive supplements just to stay healthy. I need my time to really support my physical, mental, emotional well-being. So it's not just like to pay the bare minimum. Like that is not sustainable because the level of integrity like that we need to have in all our being in order to be in true service and not be running on empty, like instead of giving our 20% and then burning out and getting sick, being able to be so full that we're overflowing with our 100%. And then people get to benefit more because the people that come to us get to receive our 100% instead of our 20%, and we don't get burned out. So then we can sustain a healthy lifestyle that can continue to overflow to even more people. So that's also helping me shift my perspective around even charging more because there's so much judgment out there and you can feel it. You can feel it too. Like not everybody, but you can feel it when other healers are like, why are you charging so much? And it's like this anger or clients or everybody that just been like it's almost like how dare you, you know, like this energy, this frequency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's reflecting a belief system that I have, right? That I need to work in. But it's also learning to hold that and understand. Like maybe they don't get it because they're not healers. They don't understand how it works, how you have to be like impeccable with your energy, with everything that you put in your body. And but if you know, because only you know you are responsible for that. And that is also comes along making these decisions and standing strong in your worth and what you require in order to be in your best self to truly be of service. So thank you for the
Yes. So
question.
much yes. The more I receive, the more I can give. And it's in addition, I'm the same way. I have all these food sensitivities. I'm a projector in human design. And so the amount of energetic care I have to take of myself is a lot. And so, but what I wanted to say is the more money that we have, the more we're able to invest in things. And so we're investing in ourself, in our health, and our energy, care and management. We're also able to invest in each other. Like if, you're running your own business, you need to hire a marketing person who's going to help bring more customers to you, but you also want to pay that person well. We don't want to perpetuate this awful system where we're all paying each other nothing as employees and employers. So as a business owner, you are empowered through bringing, receiving a lot more money so that you can take care of the people who are helping support you and your business and pay them well. I don't want my employees to be working 40 hours a week for $20 an hour. I want them to be working like 5 hours a week for much more an hour, I want to be able to bless the people that are helping me tend to my energy and my mission. And in addition, we can be helping our communities. We can donate money. We can donate time. The more that we receive, the more ability we have to give. And I think that's the piece that we're really not thinking about. We know that. Everybody listening to this knows that. It's just that it's not the front story that we're telling ourselves when we think like, oh, I just need this to get by. Well, you're just getting by. You're not really able to fulfill your mission. You're not really giving. When I am so abundant that I am overflowing, I feel comfortable and safe. I am out in the community giving. And that is ultimately like how we're going to heal the world, really, is the spiritual entrepreneurs. It's like this big psyop that we are not supposed to make money. Like that is the psyop. And that is how they're keeping us kind of down a level, right? And so stepping into that ownership and that authority of, yes, I am worth this money and my mission is worth this money and I'm going to recirculate this wealth. I'm not holding it. I'm not doing bad things with it, right? So it's all these stories and we know better. And so we do create a shame cycle when we realize like, oh gosh, I'm running such negative stories. That's okay. Just start telling yourself the truth as you notice these stories popping up. It's really just about getting conscious and mindful with ourselves about every story we're telling ourselves,
Wow, it's so profound. The deep work that needs to happen, in all levels, but like the releasing the old stories and then the reprogramming, so deep. And I have like, because I know you're also in the healing, a healer and all of these things, like what are maybe some practices that you can, like grounded practices, maybe everyday practices that people can incorporate to actually begin to do this work? Because when I hear all of these things and they make sense in my mind, but sometimes my body still is freaking out. My nervous system still doesn't believe it. So how do you go deeper so that you can access those parts and reprogram them as well?
So I do most of this work outside in joy. So I spend time in the garden, like listening to music and frolicking around while I'm um, attracting and working on my frequency around money. I don't do it sitting at the computer. I don't do it like while I'm looking at my taxes. I do create those ritual kind of experiences around this work. Like if you could see my space where I work, it's like I have my singing bowl. Like I have all the stuff right here because I've created this space for myself when I am engaged in working on my bookkeeping and my taxes. But the rest of this work I do in a joyful state. I find the things that light me up and I get into that frequency of expansion and abundance. And from that place is where I start working on the stories I'm telling myself, what I'm attracting in. And I do a lot of my like manifestation attraction work, like in the garden. That is how I've attracted some of my biggest clients. And then once you do that work, in between that moment and when the thing actually arrives in your reality is when a whole bunch of fears will pop up for you to observe. And we can see this through other people, how other people are responding to us, different things that come up in our reality. You might get a bill in the mail that's like past due that you didn't know about. All of these things are showing us where we're holding a contracted frequency in our body, the places, the stories that we're telling ourselves, the programs that we're running around our ability to attract and flow frequency or currency. And so I like to use my reality as like a mirrored I don't know, like lesson zone. And each thing that pops up between that time frame while I'm waiting for the thing to actually like appear in my reality, those are all of my lessons. And so I look at each one very consciously and I ask myself, what is the story that I'm telling myself and what is the truth? And I just keep saying the truth out loud. Our voice, I think, is the most powerful healing tool that we have. It creates a vibrational frequency that resounds in our whole energy body and all of our subtle bodies. And so continuing to reinforce that out loud and knowing that these things are going to pop up. We're going to be triggered. We're stepping into a zone of resistance, right? But just like any relationship in our life, our relationship to money is showing us a mirrored reflection of what's going on in our nervous system. And so the other piece is doing, you hit on this a little bit, is doing nervous system work. And so I will sit again, like in the garden or wherever you're feeling a lot of abundance and joy. I will sit and I will ask my nervous system how it feels holding $50,000 and I'll tense up, right? And so I start sitting with those ideas, sitting with what would it be like to have more? And I allow my nervous system to respond. And then I calm myself down and I do a lot of tapping on my body. Like, we are okay. This is great. These are all the good things we're going to do. And so I do a ton of this work by talking out loud to myself. I don't know if I'm assuming that this kind of works for a lot of people, but that's my biggest tip. And also doing visualization, but kind of bringing that visualization into real life. So an example would be visualizing the version of you. We can probably, a lot of us can see this version of us that exists, that is so abundant and doing all these things and living in the beautiful house and having this like higher frequency experience. So I ask myself, what is that version of me doing? What do they do when they wake up in the morning? What foods are they putting in their body? How are they managing their time? Are they exercising? Like, are they paying their taxes? And then I start putting these things into action in my current state of being. If we are always thinking about these things as some other version or some future version of us, something that hasn't happened yet, we don't get so much into the embodiment of these practices. And the truth is that the way that we heal and the way that we change our frequency and the way that we therefore change our experience is by being it now. And so what is the millionaire version of you doing today? And how are they giving and receiving those monies, right? And so we can bring all of this into practice in sort of a like ritualistic ceremony experience, but it bridges these two worlds. And then we sit down and we look at our money with gratitude and we pay others with gratitude. And that's when things will start circulating. And once you find that first client who is willing to pay you very well, because there are a lot of people holding a lot of money in this world that are very willing to pay us. And I think one belief system that comes up too is that we're only helping people who are poor or who are unhealed, right? There are versions of people who have healed themselves and they might be running a business and need your help and they have a lot of money to pay you with, right? So expanding our mind into who we're helping and what areas we're tapping. And then I forgot what my first thought was, where I was going with that. But once you get that first client that is willing to pay you quite a bit more, it will shift your mindset around what is possible. And so allowing yourself that opportunity, like just give it a try, see what happens if you lean into the resistance and start adjusting these stories in your mind. And like thinking about what are the possibilities, like what would I be able to do if I had this, and that really getting ourselves into a more expanded optimistic perspective and getting out of the programmed perspective that we've been and are continuously told how we should be being, right?
Of course, I love that. Thank you for all of those practices. I'm going to start putting them. I already do them, but never with the thought about money, which is interesting, but incorporating them into my every morning practice. I love that. One thing that was coming up to me, like as you were speaking, when specifically when we speak about the moment of like when we raise our prices and we say it out loud to the potential client and we feel this restriction and everything, and even sometimes the judgment that comes on the other side, and that I don't want to pay that much for that. And someone recently told me this reframing as well, and I want to share it here. For example, I do cacao ceremonies, right? Like sometimes, if, at some points, I was doing it every weekend. But let's say I'm charging $50 for per person for a cacao ceremony, or 60. And someone will be like, oh no, that's too expensive. But that same person would go the whole weekend out at a bar and spend hundreds of dollars in alcohol that is going to actually create an addiction, make them sicker, make them feel worse, and disconnect more from themselves. And they don't think that's a lot of money. But coming to a ceremony that is actually potentially going to change their life. Like I've had so many clients that have come to a ceremony and they're like, wow, this really shifted my perspective, that it's actually creating like quality time with yourself, like doing something healthy for yourself. $50 is too much. And I think this comes with the whole like, because as healers, we've been underpricing ourselves so much. I feel like we've created, we educated the culture or the people to undervalue our work as well. So I feel like right now the challenge that we present, like I'm speaking again from the El Paso, I live in the city called El Paso, Texas, and all of this is still kind of new. Like it's not like in LA or in Austin where it's like blew up and like people can charge like according to like good prices and people receive it and be like, okay, that's fine. You know, Paso, I'm still one of the people here that charges the most for what I do, and the people who do similar things that I do charge so little. And I realize like we all have this constriction, but we're also by underpricing our work and our services, we are creating this collective consciousness. We're educating clients that this work should be cheap, and we're not taking into accountability how those same clients have no problem spending their money in like $300 in one concert or whatever, that is just entertainment. Or I mean, everybody can spend their money however they want to, but how people just don't value our work when we don't value it as well. Mm-hmm.
Totally. And not attaching ourselves. So this is a big lesson I've been going through very recently, which is to observe when someone is having a reaction to you, to observe, but not attach ourselves to whatever story they have going on. It's a great example that people will go spend tons of money on drugs and alcohol. They'll pay lawyers, accountants, doctors in Western medicine who are not even helping them
They're
so
making
much money. And
yeah.
it's just because it's a standard that's been set. And people believe like, oh, the doctor knows more than me. So that's why there's value. They know more than me. The accountant knows more than me. And that is not true. First of all, everybody is an equal human. Everybody has challenges and gifts that they bring, right? I've, as an accountant, worked with doctors and lawyers, and you would not believe what goes on behind the scenes, like how disorganized they could be. Or I've had naturopaths who spend all their money on fast food, and I'm able to see that as their bookkeeper. And so, it's all these false perceptions that people have. And like really all we can do is know our truth, tell ourselves the truth and have that running as our story, know our value. And if someone disagrees with us, that's fine. Don't attach yourself to it. They're going to go through a process and learn their lesson. And obviously they're not ready to work with your frequency. And so a lot of the times that's just a gift from the universe. Like maybe that's a bad client. Maybe they're not ready, whatever it is. We just let it pass by. And the ones that do come in front of us that we feel that calling to help, we help them. But it doesn't have to be every single one. And we don't have to attach ourselves to all the stories they're telling, because if we're this aware at the awareness level that we're all at of how energy and frequency works and why we're all here and this realm that we're in, all of the energetics and the spiritual knowledge we have, and we're still struggling this much with money, of course everyone else is, the people who have this knowledge and the people who don't. And so the best thing we can do is love them and say, okay, great, and let them pass by and not attach ourselves to the programming that they're running. and hope and set the intention that they, are able to receive the healing or whatever it is that they need, whether it's through us or through another medium. And we just leave it there. And that is hard to do, but it is a practice to start doing. Like, I get down on myself a lot of the time and I get in these shame cycles because like something will happen and I'll react not in the best way, or I'll have a reaction, right? And so I just always reminding myself that like a lot of these things are a practice for us. We are practicing not attaching ourselves to everyone else's story. We are practicing feeling good about money as an exchange for our energy. We are practicing feeling our self-worth, right? And the universe, life, is going to continue to bring us opportunities to practice those things, especially if we keep having the same reaction, right? We will continue to have opportunities to practice until we shift our frequency and have a new experience. And so, I think we can be really hard on ourselves for not doing things right, or, for being in this, state. But the truth is that we are practicing this, we're bridging this, and we're bridging two very different worlds. Spiritual, everything is energy, frequency, and then like the US economy. And we are the bridge, and we are showing everybody around us how to move differently through this world, how to exist differently, how to tell ourselves a different story, how to be in our own sovereignty and not listen to everything that's told to us, And we are those examples. And those clients who come to us see that example. And they also see, I have a lot of spiritual friends or people, mentors that I work with. And when they say, I'm not available, my energy needs to rest. I'm like, awesome. Thank you for doing that example for me, because I need to see how that's done so that I can do it too. And the same thing goes with money. The more we're empowering ourselves and being that example, our clients might have a reaction to it, but soon enough they will understand and they'll be able to put that in practice for themselves too. So again, like I'm a super optimistic person and I'm always trying, my brain hangs out in the negative. And so I'm always looking for like the positive story. How can I reframe this? Tell myself something different so that I'm having a different experience. And then also just like remembering that we're all having a different experience. We all have a different perspective and they're all true and they're all valid, but we don't have to agree with everyone. We don't have to do what anybody tells us to do. We can do it our own way. And like ultimately that's the energy we're moving into and need to be embodying is, how do I want to do this? How does this work for me so that my energy in life is fulfilled and I'm fulfilling my purpose and mission in doing the same for others? So yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No, I love this. I love this. Wow. I'm just getting so many downloads just from listening to you speak. And I feel like just by this conversation, I'm already receiving so much. And I hope everybody who's listening does as well. And I feel like we're coming to an end for this amazing conversation. I'm so grateful for you and for your gifts and the wisdom that you have to share and the support that you're giving in the world by helping spiritual entrepreneurs come into their financial sovereignty. This is really needed and really important and necessary, and just infinitely grateful. I feel like this is just like the introduction. I want to have you over like to so many podcasts more, because there's so much more that I want to ask you that I'm curious about. And I'm just going to leave this subject hanging for the next interview, because I really want to dig deeper into your brain of like, how can people organize their business, their marketing, their everything, build everything based on their unique frequency, based on their human design and their gene keys. So we're going to leave that for next time, and hopefully people will listen to that one as well. Thank you so much, Ariel, for your time, for your energy, for your wisdom. Before we leave, how can people find you? Like, how you want to share? Like,
yes. Thank you so much for having me and for this conversation and for recognizing me and my wisdom. And yes, I'm so excited to talk about human design and gene keys, because that's really like the next step. Once you kind of start practicing the things we talked about today, the next step is to use these systems to understand your energy better and how you work with others, how you work with money, how you attract people, how you market yourself. There's so much here, like what you're here to do, your purpose, all of that can be found or used through these. I like to call them containers. It's like a container of perspective. We can like look through the human design, we can look through astrology, but like these are all tools that we can incorporate in our life and in our business. So I would love to come back and talk about those. And where people can find me is my website, arielmaguire.com. And then I am on Instagram and TikTok, I am Mystical Mother.
Hmm. Which you're a mother of 4 kids, which is
I
amazing.
am. I also am a mother.
I love that.
I have 4 daughters, yes, and I live on an off-grid farm, off-grid cacao farm in Hawaii. It is beautiful,
You're living my
a
dream.
beautiful result of the big breakdown I had when I had my big business.
Love that. Oh my God. And maybe in another episode we can go deeper into your story because I'm so curious of like all the details that happened for you to go from accountant firm to living in an off-grid farm, which is my dream, cacao farm in Hawaii. So, anyways, so many more conversations to come, but thank you so much for your time, Ariel. Sending you big hugs and blessings to everyone listening. Namaste.